Greetings and welcome to a decidedly industrious LGR thing. And this gargantuan gray giant is the IBM 7532 industrial computer, first introduced on May 21st, 1985. It's a 19-inch 5U rack-mount system designed for use in manufacturing factories, power plants, alongside mainframes, or really anywhere a business might need a rugged beast of a PC. And the price? $6,145, or around $15,000 adjusted for inflation. Costs only went up from there, as that was only for the base model with a 6 MHz 286, 512 kilobytes of RAM, a 1.2 meg floppy drive, and no hard drive. If those specs sound familiar, then you might know the PCAT Model 5170, and yeah, on a technical level, the 7532 is effectively the same as an IBM AT, which launched a year prior in 1984. But while the AT sold for a couple $1,000s less, it was built for small business and office use, whereas the 7532 was designed for industrial applications every step of the way. Though amusingly, the two machines weigh basically the same despite the size difference, at around 44 pounds or 20 kilograms. The industrial PC is taller on the outside, but that's because the 5¼ drives mount sideways, allowing for more room inside to accommodate taller expansion cards. It also provided greater airflow for components, and to that end, the 7532 has a filtered 140mm fan up front. And the filter can easily be swapped out with new ones as needed, reducing unwanted intake of whatever debris happens to be floating nearby. Even in its most basic configuration, the industrial PC was constructed with one goal in mind: long-term versatile usage within harsher, specialized environments. And there were tons of available upgrades. Check out these prices. $1,125 to bring it up to 1 MB of RAM, $1,695 for a 20 MB hard drive, $650 for a second high-density floppy drive, $524 for an EGA graphics card, and on and on. So a configuration like this one could have cost roughly $10,000 back in 1985, and that's still not including an industrial monitor. Customers had to pony up an additional $1,175 for the 7534 industrial graphics display, which was the monitor of choice for machines with EGA adapters. It's effectively a rehoused IBM 5154 monitor with its own ventilation system, with fans and filters just like the 7532. And it's packing a CRT with the same specs as the 5154, encased in an appropriately industrial shell with bigger knobs, moved from the front over to the right-hand side. And of course, IBM had to build a matching industrial keyboard, with the excellent Model M being the obvious choice. Mine isn't original to this system, it's a standard Model M installed in a new industrial case, but it's got the desired look. A gray plastic shell complementing the gray of the PC, the gray of the monitor, and presumably the gray of your work environment. And if that was somewhere particularly prone to nastiness, you had to get an IBM keyboard condom, or keyboard cover, for the Model M. It's a rubber sheath that hugs the unit snugly, protecting it from any dirt, debris, or liquid you don't want getting inside the keyboard and messing things up. With the adhesive strips holding it in place underneath, it's a tight fit, but remains usable since the rubber stays pliable and isn't too thick. I also really dig the silver on black IBM logos on everything too. It's an appealing change compared to the classic off-white and blue badges they used back then. On that note, there were all kinds of industrial computers beyond this one, both before and after. But its main contemporary was the IBM 7531 that launched simultaneously in '85. It was the same computer inside a standing tower case that weighed almost twice as much and had mounts for bolting it down to the floor. And a little later there was the 7552 Model 140, which again had the same specs but in this awesome modular system, allowing for component swapping via front-loading modules that connected to a backplane. I've also seen a few different color variants of the 7532 itself, though I'm not sure if IBM officially painted them that way or they simply got a little spritzing up to match the environments they were used in. Also note the locking doors on some of them. That was a component I've seen in lots of pictures, but mine unfortunately didn't come with. It also didn't come with a graphics adapter, a hard drive, or any extra RAM, but I've added all those so we have a more complete experience to experience. And in interest of completion, having a rack mount case without a rack to mount it in would be a darned shame. Typically, it'd go in a traditional 19-inch server rack like this, part of a larger stack of equipment suitable for whatever environment it found itself in. But I did the LGR thing and commissioned this lovely wooden 5U rack specifically for the 7532 from Shady Maple Woodworks. Not sponsored, I just really like their stuff and this custom job turned out great. 13-ply Baltic birchwood stained with a pleasing autumn brown finish. Perhaps not the most traditionally industrial look I could have chosen, but it sure is my look. It gives it this late 70s vibe that's a little anachronistic, but whatever, it makes me happy. And since there aren't any handles on the side of the case, I'm glad the 7532 has these metal handles bolted onto the front. Makes me feel like I'm hauling around a luggable battle station. I love it. So, let's power on this magnificent monster, boot up DOS, and dive deeper into this roughly $10,000 industrial computer from 1985. Oh yeah, that's not quiet at all. Exactly what I expect a factory floor computer to sound like. Those extra fans in the case and the monitor certainly amp up the noise level, and it'd be even louder if it had an MFM hard disk installed. On the topic of noise, I'm glad IBM kept the clicky blood orange paddle switch for power. That thing is endlessly satisfying. I also like that the rack mount case means the switch is on the front instead of the side. And yep, that means the power supply itself is mounted sideways with the power cable connecting on the right. The cord is one of those 90-degree angled deals, which plugs in here and gets strung along this rail to exit around back, so there's no removing it once it's rack mounted. IBM even included a reset button, a handy feature to have physically, and something the PC-AT didn't have at all. Another addition is the keyboard port on the front, so you don't have to bother going around to the back of the rack to plug in a keyboard. The rear 5-pin connector is still there, along with this metal plate that screws on top to make sure it doesn't come unplugged. Now, you can only plug your keyboard into one port or the other though, not both. To use the one up front, there's this little cable dangling inside you can string around back to plug in there, and then pass it through to the front. You'll also notice this little empty cutout that in this case doesn't actually do anything. On models with a door installed, it's where the key lock nestles in to lock things down. Here though, it's useless. So I put a tiny beer and edamame in there. What a cozy little appetizer. Next to that are the disk drives, with supported hardware being the same as an AT, difference being they mount vertically instead, and there's only space for 2 half-height drives instead of 4. Installing a traditional hard disk means you either need a half-height drive to fit beside the floppy, or a full-height drive that goes inside this beefy drive cage in the back right corner of the case. And getting into the case is refreshingly simple. There are 4 screws, 2 on each side, which you remove to lift off this sheet metal lid. No need to pull off the front panel just to access the internals. The expansion card area is enhanced as well, with this metal retainer bar on top that's padded with snap-in foam bracers, ensuring the cards don't jostle around inside. And you get the same 8 expansion slots as you do in an IBM AT, but again, the case design allows for larger cards to be installed as needed. For example, my 7532 came with this gigantic card installed in slot 2 when I got it. It's nearly twice as tall as the typical 16-bit ISA card, and it was paired with a little power board that plugs in beside it. But even after researching all the IBM part numbers and asking folks online, I haven't figured out what this card is called or what all it can do. The label on the lid calls it a channel adapter with the bus power distributor installed beside it. Now that's this thing here, which plugged into expansion slot 1. And also into 2 power cables, labeled P11 and P12, normally used for disk drives. The best guess for this setup seems to be a bus interface for connecting to a mainframe and getting onto its network, but exactly what the channel adapter is called and what equipment it connected to, I've yet to find out. Otherwise, the expansion card situation is standard stuff here. There's an IBM Disk Controller card, an EGA card for 16 color graphics, 128K memory expansion to take it up to 640K, and a networking card with a 15-pin AUI port for 10 base 5 Ethernet. I don't have a serial parallel adapter installed, and it didn't come with one originally either. That was a $150 optional add-on back in '85. And in lieu of a mechanical spinning hard disk, I've got an XT IDE compact flash drive going. It's an 8-bit card that's not ideal for AT-class systems, but it's convenient, and it does the trick until I find a period-correct MFM drive or an IDE controller with a suitable BIOS. And of course, sound output was never a priority in the industrial computer, with the PC speaker installed in the bottom of the case, and that was enough. An ad-lib card seemed like fun though, so I dropped one of those in there too, cause why not? Barely being able to hear the music over a cacophony of industrial fans sounds like my Trent Reznor fantasy, so I was into it. And yeah, let's talk about that monitor for a minute. I mentioned earlier that it's an EGA display, but everything is green, so what's up? Well, it's kinda broken, but we'll get to that. It turns out the 7534 industrial graphics display is harder to find than the PC itself, so I was quite happy to find this one boxed for a good price. And check this out, it was originally property of the nuclear department of Salem, New Jersey's Public Service Electric and Gas Company. I can only assume it was used in some aspect of the Salem nuclear power plant, a perfect home for an IBM industrial computer if I've ever seen one. Unfortunately though, its previous life in the nuclear department took its toll, and it had a few issues. For one, the exhaust fan needs a replacement, and the foam filters underneath have reached the point of deterioration where they turn to dust on contact. Same thing with the fan filter inside the computer. This open cell foam really isn't meant to last this long. Thankfully, replacement filter sheets are readily available and don't cost much, so I grabbed some from a hardware store and chopped them down to fit inside the filter housings. That was the least of the monitor's problems though. The brightness was way too low when I got it, and the adjustment knob had completely snapped off inside, which meant taking it apart to see the damage, and that means removing these two security bits on top of the case. A quick trip to Harbor Freight and a bit driver took care of that, and we're in, no problem. And you could tell the filtering did its job over the years. It's pretty dang clean in here, considering its age. Unfortunately, the brightness knob snapped off at the base of the potentiometer, making repairs rather tricky. So to rotate the pot, I did the old hot screwdriver trick to melt in a slot and adjusted the brightness without the knob. So it's bright now, but that made the biggest issue even more obvious. The color is all wrong. Everything gray is yellow, and anything blue isn't showing up at all. It looks perfect on my IBM 5154 monitor, so it's not the graphics card. The cable itself is good too. I used some deoxit on the pins and checked the wiring to make sure everything was fine, and it was. So I had to check the RGB pots on the monitor itself, which are hidden away inside the case. Adjusting these with some plastic adjustment tools sadly showed that blue simply isn't displaying on the CRT at all. There are a number of different things that can cause this, but until I can address that, for this video I took the quick and dirty path of just making the dang thing green. Obviously it'd be ideal to have all 16 colors, but until I can get it fixed I'm displaying EGA and monochrome. To put a positive spin on things, I think glowing green monochrome suits an industrial computer nicely, especially one with a display sourced from the Salem nuclear department. And using the mode BW80 command in DOS helps certain programs use a color graphics card on a screen without color. In regards to the operating system, IBM PC-DOS version 3.0 was the OS initially recommended for the 7532, and I've got version 3.3 going here, with that IBM logo screen being something I put together as a batch file to load on startup and look cool. And while I don't have much industrial software to run or mainframes to connect to, I do have plenty of games and things that'll happily run on a 286. This particular 7532 is actually a later revision from 1988, which has a 286 CPU on board running at 8 MHz instead of 6, so that's nice. And yeah, seeing these EGA games run in forced monochrome is pretty fun too, in an admittedly messed up kind of way. Unless programs are set to run in a way optimized for monochrome on a color graphics card, anything that's either solid blue or red appears as pure black, so that's unfortunate. It reminds me of certain CGA-compatible monitors that had a switch dedicated to enabling green monochrome. And since we're displaying normal EGA underneath and not using a Hercules card, we can't take advantage of games running those awesome Hercules graphics. If I end up wanting that option though, I could try something like an ATI EGA Wonder card or another monitor entirely, until getting this one fixed up to show blue again. So in the meantime, I've been enjoying the temporary limitations of displaying EGA graphics in bright glowing green. Though most of that enjoyment stems from running familiar software on industrial hardware that was once unthinkable in a home setting. No one in their right mind would purchase $10,000 industrial equipment to play King's Quest in 1985, but here we are, doing exactly that decades later, and the thought cracks me up. This factory floor behemoth is like brutalism in the form of a computer, a real blunt force object of a machine that was never intended for any form of pleasure, and that's what makes it so pleasurable. While many professional-grade computers are precision instruments, fine-tuned to perform a specific task precisely and efficiently, the 7532, in contrast, is more of a sledgehammer, a beefed-up version of a normal hammer that accomplishes basically the same thing, just in a far less elegant and more "rah-get-this-done" kind of way. IBM took an office computer, dropped a bunch of fans and bracers inside, painted it gray, and charged between $6,000 and $10,000 for it. The result was big, loud, and kind of ugly, and I can't help but love it. And if you enjoyed this computery retrospective, then yeah, you're in the right spot. I've covered many more machines, and there's more to come all the time here on LGR. And as always, thank you very much for watching.